y'all. This is like really real because that means that the abuse that they had encounter a lot of times they identify themselves with that. The stress of reliving that trauma in your mind, and when you're reliving it, it's activating the pain. And so people don't like to feel the pain all the time. They want to be numb. They don't want to keep reliving that horrifying, situation that they had to grow up in. And so what happens is that they do anything to numb it. Baby, you go home and put yourself in timeout. If you're not having a good day, don't you go mess up somebody else's day. Welcome back to the Kitchen Table Podcast, where we have real conversations about tough topics, all in the name of protecting children, empowering families, and breaking cycles of silence, generational curses, and abuse. So I am Jannetta Brass. I am a licensed clinical social worker. In today's episode, it's all about the four main types of child abuse. I will break down each type and what it looks like, the red flags to watch for, and how we can take action if something doesn't feel right. So this one is the most important episode in this series, and that's just because it's going to give you some details and it's going to increase your awareness. So we just take a deep breath, take your time, and remember, knowledge leads to protection. So let's start just with the simple truth. Abuse can take on many forms. Some are visible and others are hidden plain in sight. So all of them are harmful and they also are preventable. So the four main topics are physical abuse. The four primary types of abuse are physical abuse, emotional or psychological abuse, sexual abuse, and neglect. So we're going to walk through each one, not to scare you, but to equip you, to give you the tools. And when you understand the signs, you will become a more safe adult and you will actually become a more safe parent too for your children. So physical abuse is often the most recognized, but even if it can be hiding, um, you still kind of recognize it. Sometimes people wear long sleeves to cover up stuff. I do remember reading a story where these daycare workers were physically abusing the kids, and what they would do, they will actually physically abuse them on the back of their feet. And so on the back of the feet, it's much easier to hide. And then it's much easier to lie about, saying, oh, they didn't have no shoes on, this, that, and the third. But thank goodness for cameras that was in the rooms. So a non-accidental physical harm to children. This can be hitting, kicking, burning, biting, shaking, or choking. Some forms of physical abuse it's not clear what level of physical treatment counts as abuse. It has been found that rib fractures are the most common injuries linking to physical abuse. So here's some signs that you want to watch for. You want to watch for unexplained bruises, burns, fractures, injuries that don't match the stories, fearfulness around a certain adult. Watch your kids when they are around other people. You just can't trust them with everybody, and kin folks included. Making sure that you're watching for their behaviors, any flinching when touch or suddenly sensitivity to a physical contact. And what kids may say, they may say that, oh, I'm just clumsy, I fail, or don't tell, I get in trouble. Those are some of the things that the parents will tell the kids to say, hey, don't you tell, I may get in trouble. So remembering, spanking can come cross into abuse. when it causes injury or is done in anger or with objects. I know some of you guys out there believe in corporal punishment and thinking that that is very helpful. So let me give you an example what happens though. Remember, I always tell you guys that the kids model the behaviors of the caregivers. So when the child get in trouble, the child that made you mad or angry, and you holler and yell at them, and now it's time for them to get a spanking or a whooping is what we call it in my culture. And so that's what happens. And so the child goes to school, and what happens? Somebody made the child mad. The child got angry. Instead of the whooping part, they still putting them hands on the kids. So you're actually teaching your kids violence. When someone makes you mad, and when someone doesn't do what you want them to do or need for them to do, then you physically hurt them. And physically hurting them can put them straight. And now they got the memo and give them some act right. And so now they're going to do what it is that I want them to do and act in the way that I need them to act. And that is not healthy at all. So I would encourage you guys to find some other form of discipline instead of physical discipline. So the next abuse is emotional psychological abuse. This one is harder to detect, deeply damaging. So a pattern of abuse that harms a child's emotional well-being and sense of worth. So psychological abuse includes bad words, making fun of a child, and doing things that scare or terrify them, which can lead to mental illness in the future. I think I said this on my podcast a couple of weeks ago. Parents, it is important how you speak to your children. You cannot be calling them names that is not their name. If it's not their government name or their nickname, you cannot. What I hate seeing is these parents be calling your kids bees and hoes, and they going to school and calling other people that too, you know. There's this one radio personality, Ricky Smiley, and his grandparents raised him, and he said something. He always tells his story, and I remember him talking about it probably years ago. But he said that his grandma would call him a back in the day, if you didn't have your father and your mother in your life, and I know his father got killed when he was a young age, they would call the kids bastards. And so that's what she would call them. And he thought that that was norm and it was okay. Y'all, we cannot be calling our kids names like that or anything. And so, and I may have got the name, what she called him wrong. If I did, I apologize. But I know it was something similar to that. And, but we can't be calling them just anything. Y'all, words cut deep and it shapes who they are. And so it's very important that we're not overly criticizing and rejecting them. I know some parents have an issue with their own kids that they carried for 9 months and birthed into this world because they look like the father or they act like the father and you didn't have a good relationship with them. And so instead of looking at your child, you see their father in them, and you are really mistreating them, calling them names. And one of the things that I see a lot in my community is when you'll hear a mom say, "Ooh, you just like your daddy. Ooh, you just like your mama." And those tones and stuff, the kids can feel the disgust. And so you saying that is really telling them that they're no good. You know, you didn't say it in a positive way. And so now you just continually beating down their self-esteem, yelling and threatening and shaming them, yelling and making all them threats. That's not good at all. That when emotional abuse is worse than physical abuse. Like with physical abuse, at least you can heal. Some stuff don't heal all the way, but it will heal. But them emotional scars, they are probably the worstest scars. There is a book called A Boy Called It. And the name of the man who wrote the book, his name is Dave. And he's from out in California. And this is probably the worstest case for child abuse in that area. And I want to say it was probably 3 or 4 kids, but his mom, he was the target child. So nobody got treated the way that he did but him. And his mom was very physically, verbally abusive to him, that she wouldn't even call his government name or nickname. She just called him it. If you guys are avid readers and you like reading, I would encourage you guys to go and get the book and read it. He has like 3 books that I've read. Um, a Child Called It, The Lost Boy, and The Man Named Dave. Those are some real good readers. If you're okay reading, because he does give details about the abuse. So if you're okay reading about those type of levels of abuse, I will encourage you guys to go get it. There's another book called um, A Boy Who Was Raised Like a Dog. Now, that book is by Bruce Perry, and we had to read that book in graduate school, but it has different cases and levels of abuse that he talks about from different clients that he worked with, and he strictly only worked with kids. I would encourage you, I think every foster mom need to read that book because he goes in depth on the brain and how the brain developed, and why kids have certain behaviors when they are abused in certain ways. So I will encourage you guys to go and do that. Some of the okay, manipulating a child to believe they are unwanted or unloved. That's another example. Making the child feel that nobody wants them, nobody loves them. Yeah, that is not good at all. Y'all be surprised of how many adults that I have as my clients, and they're old, and all kind of stuff happened. All kind of trauma happened with them growing up, and they have carried it their whole life to the point that they believed it. So, if you criticizing your kids and you making them feel like they're nothing, and if you do it long enough, pretty soon they become to believe that. And we cannot do that. Here are some of the red flags that you want to watch out for. Extreme withdrawals or being clingy, low self esteem, frequently just crying and anxious. And so when you anxious or anxiety, this is what you want to look for. Someone that's easily to startle. They very easy to startle. If they instant questions and they worried about where they going, what's happening, what's this and that, any signs of worrying, those are some red flags. And overly compliant or parenting fied behavior. So when we say overly compliant, some children learn that if I do everything that my parents want me to do, then I'm not going to get in trouble. And so they not only do that with their parents, but they also do that with any authorities that they are around. And so, and they do that because they have this great fear that they're going to get in trouble and something bad is going to happen if they don't. And I don't care how much compliant they are with the parent or the caregiver. If they are abusers, nothing is never good enough. Nothing is never right. And so they're going to always have those complaints. And that just kind of keeps the kids' anxiety levels at a very elevated level. Words matter, tone matter, and children internalize what they hear. Even when we think they're not listening, they are. Y'all, whether y'all saying something or not, they feel that. They feel the disgust that you have of them. when you're around them, they are very sensitive. Kids don't have a lot going on in their lives like we as adults. We get busy and we just going here and there. Kids are very sensitive. So if you feeling irritable, if you feeling anxious, the kids feel that. Now they may not have the words for it, but they do feel that. This next one is sexual abuse. Any sexual acts, behavior, or contract contact with a child for the purpose of adult sexual gratification. This includes fondling, intercourse, exposure, exploitation through pornography. This is one of the most underreported form of abuse. And why? Because it often wrapped in manipulation, shame, and fear. So, trying to think, should I go a little deep with this or not? So, yeah, I will. So when we talk about sexual abuse, I am going to do another podcast on that in details, but the I just want to let y'all know that when predators when they move in, they groom. And sometimes they can groom for a year or two or three before they make their move. But the child is not the first person they groom. They groom the parent first. And you can be a single parent. That's who they really look for. They look for single parents, or they look for parents who are working and got so much going on that they're not paying attention to their kids. Those are the people that they single out. And so once they groom the parents and earn the parents' trust, now they have access to the child. They can, and that's all they're looking for. And then once they get that access to the child, then they start grooming the child. And yeah, I will talk in details about sexual abuse probably in the next podcast that I have, because this is Child Abuse Awareness Month. And I really, really want to share with you guys some red flags and some things that you guys can do to protect your kids. So, signs to watch out for is age inappropriate sexual knowledge or behaviors, pain, redness, or injuries, in their private areas, fear of certain people or places, and regression behavior like bedwetting, thumb sucking, and withdrawal or aggressive behaviors. Um, when we talk about looking for the signs and stuff, one of the things that I want you guys to start doing is start having conversations with your kids. You guys need to start practicing boundaries with them. In this climate today, we can no longer continue what we did back in the day. So, you around your families and you have family gatherings and stuff. And I know when I was growing up, you have those aunties and uncles. They just want to give you a hug, whether you want to or not. You had to. Go on over there and hug your auntie. Go on over there and give them a kiss. Tell them hi. That's just what they would do. And so now in today's climate, that's not always good. So you have to teach your kids boundaries, meaning that you can ask for a hug. And if I don't want you to hug me, that's fine, because that's their body. And so we can say, okay, I don't want a hug. We can do a high five, or we can do a fist pump, but it doesn't necessarily have to, if they don't want a hug, they don't have to. And then if they do want a hug, make them do a side hug. You're going to have to change up some stuff. And parents, you're going to have to practice this. So you can't no longer just give your kids some hugs anymore, not in this day and climate. You have to ask them, hey, can I hug you? My niece came down probably about 3 weeks ago, and she had her, my little great nephew, and he was in the car, and I seen him and wanted to run out and just see him. But before I gave him a hug, because it's just naturally to do it, he's like, I think 3 or 4. And I was like, hey, can I get a hug? He said, yes. gave him a hug. I said, "Ooh, can I kiss you?" And he was like, "Yes." Gave me a kiss on his forehead. Now he wiped it off. And then when his Mimi gave him a kiss on the forehead, that was better. But I want you to know that I did that on purpose because we have to practice boundaries. And I know it's your kids and you feel like you should hug them all the time whenever you want to. But if we don't start practicing it at home, then they are not going to know what to do when they're outside of your care. So it's kind of like here in Oklahoma growing up, we have tornadoes. And so I remember being in elementary school. We always have tornado drills and we had fire drills too, but more so tornadoes. And we will practice them. Now, I don't understand why we had to put the book on over our head. I don't know what that book was going to do. But we would have to go into the hallway or go into a room that didn't have any windows in there. And then we have to put our heads down and put a book over our head and then put our heads between the knee of our legs. Now, what that was supposed to do if the tornado was going to whip through there, I have no clue. But that's what we did. And so it was a requirement to have those drills so many days, so many times a month, and also fire drills too. And I know some of you guys are saying, well, why did y'all do all that? If you're not living in an area where you have tornadoes, it's because you have to practice. So if a tornado came through, because we practice it so much, they automatically went into survival mode. They automatically knew what to do. And so that's why I'm telling you, parents, to make sure that you teach your kids body safety and you teach them, hey, this is their body and they can protect it. And if they don't want to hug, they don't have to, you know. And it starts with you. There is all kind of books and stuff that you can sit down and read to your kids. And if you don't even feel comfortable having that conversation with them, you're going to have to get comfortable and do it. But you can go on YouTube, and YouTube has a lot of channels on there where people are reading books to them about consent on every level: consent, body boundaries, kid safety, what it's like. And you guys can sit and watch that watch the YouTube of them reading the books. And then when they finish, have those conversations with your kids. And you have to have the conversation more than one time. You have to have it continuously, like doing the tornado drill when I was growing up. You got to continue to have those conversations, because what the conversation is going to do, it is creating a safe space for the kids, for one. It's giving them the language that they need. Because if you never was taught, or if you never talked about sexual abuse to your children, or your parents didn't do it with you, then when things happen, they don't have the language for it. They just know that, ooh, this feel weird and good at the same time. What am I supposed to do with this? You know? And so it's very important that they have that language. That's why we don't give our private parts nicknames. Whatever it is, that's what it is. And we have to teach the kids that. So if you was go to school and we just say that your little girl was being touched on her private parts, and she go to school and she tells the teacher, Mr. Cornbread touched my cookie. What you think the teacher gonna think? The teacher probably thinking about Oreos, Chips of Hearts, or whatever. They don't know that that's the nickname for the private part. So you have to give them the language that they need and the words that they need. So if anything happens to them, they're able to communicate. You want to talk about it all the time so they'll know what steps to take. I will go a little deeper in that when I get to that sexual abuse part, and that's going to be next week too. What children might say is, I have a secret I can't tell, or someone touched me, but it was a game. That's why we talk. And so teaching your kids that we don't keep secrets. If you keep a secret, it's a good secret, and that's just because it's a surprise. And what is the surprise? The surprise could be we're going to have a surprise birthday party, a surprise, present or a gift, and you cannot keep the secret long. That's what you teach them. Like, we don't keep secrets, only good secrets, and these are the good secrets that you keep. So they can have a guide. And when you telling them about the secrets that they can keep, when someone tells them a secret and it's not on the secret list that you told them they can keep, then they're gonna automatically know red flag gonna go off. And they already know that they can't keep that because that's not a good secret. Someone touched me, but it was a game. Making sure that anytime you guys are having conversations with your kids and you're talking about body boundaries and your kids have this bubble around them, and if they don't want no one in their space, kind of like, during COVID. Y'all remember we was like 6 feet, and I'm still like that kind of today. Like 6 feet, I don't need you breathing on my neck. You in my bubble, you in my space. You got to teach the kids that and then let them know that it's okay to have those boundaries because you're helping them protect them and protect their body. Never assume that a child is lying. Always investigate further if something feels off. And if a child discloses something, believe them. That's my thing. You believe them until you have evidence, something that does not prove what they're saying is true. One thing about when it comes down to just sexual abuse at all, whether it's assault or whether it's abuse, the victim always get blamed. We see it all the time. The victim always get blamed. So a lot of times they won't say anything because they afraid that no one's going to believe them, for one. And for two, they already feeling ashamed. And for three, they may feel like they're going to get in trouble. So you don't know what the predator has told your child. That's why we have to have these conversations so they'll know what to do. We're going to move on to the next abuse, which is called neglect. So, neglect is failure to provide a child basic needs, physically, emotionally, medical, and educational. So, this includes not providing accurate food, clothing, or shelter, leaving a child unsupervised in unsafe situations, ignoring medical needs, emotional neglect, withholding affection, ignoring emotional distress. And I do know in some cases, some parents, um, they really don't know how to be affectionate, And so that's kind of hard for them because it's hard to give someone something that you never gotten. So if your parents wasn't all, lovey-dovey and affection and all that, it'd be hard for you to do. And so what I am going to encourage you to do, once again, is go find a parenting class because sometimes you're going to have to learn it and then you're going to have to go on and just give that child what they need. Once again, when you are like loving on your child and you're holding them and you're really bonding with them, that's going to help with the brain development. It's going to help them to be able to have a connection with their emotions and for it to develop real well and good, So if you're not able to do that, don't expect for your kids to like be very having any display of emotions. Um, some of the red flags that you can see for kids who are being neglected is poor hygiene or malnutrition. So any kids that you see just filthy all the time, clothes dirty, and they health don't seem great. Always got a runny nose and they don't have no medication for it or sinus or something. And they're just not being taken care of. So I used to work as a preschool teacher and we had this 2-year-old that would come in and he was always dirty. Oh, and he had behaviors out the wash. And he really gave the teacher, gave them the business. but we knew a lot of stuff was going on in the house. And so every day when he would come, I would go find some clean clothes and I would set him on the counter and I wash his face, his hands, his ears, and all. Well, we'll take the little towel and go up this part of now his arm and stuff. And uh, when I got through with him and put clothes on him, he would always say, "Oh, I feel so good." And so those are just some of the signs that you can tell when there is some neglect going on. Now, one thing that I don't think that is right for the parents, the way some people do parents, that you cannot automatically just assume that this parent is doing this willfully. Remember, we learn how to parent by watching our caregivers. So you never know if this is how they were raised. And we can always, and we do, always normalize unhealthy behaviors. And so maybe this was normal and they didn't think nothing of it because this is how they were raised and they felt like they came out okay. And so making sure that when you notice those is that you can pull the parent to the side. And if you don't feel like pulling the parent to the side, then you can always make a call to Child Protective Services. Remember that when you make a call to the Child Protective Services, you can do it anonymous, so nobody has to know. There were some times before I got into social services that I made those calls probably two or three times. My kids, they had some friends, and their friends had a stepmom who was very mean to them, physically and verbally, and having a conversation with my son, and he's talking like, "Mama, they got to get away," and this, that, and the third. So I remember one of the childs ran away, and they came to my house, and my son was like, "Mama, she can't go back home," and I was like, "Okay." She ain't got to go back home, but I got to call somebody in the family to let them know where she's at. And so I was able to get a hold of one of her adult siblings. We had a talk over the phone, and they were like, "We're going to come and get her." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to keep her here at my house until y'all come, but y'all got to be here by in the morning." And they were there the next morning to get her. Not only did they scoop her up, they took her back, but they were able to come and actually get the others after they call, Child Protective Service. Now, therapists, if you need to make a report, and if you know that if you make a report that is not safe for you, I will encourage you to make sure that you do it anonymously. Now, when I was working at a program called Child Abuse and Trauma Services, I had a real good relationship with my clients' caregivers. And so anytime that there was something said that needed to be reported, this is what I did. Because what you have to understand, that even though you got to make the report, you also can support the parent and the client. And so what I did all the time is like, "Hey," I call them in the office and like, "Hey, we got to talk. I got to make this report. I want you to know that." But I even go a step further. I'm going to make this report with you in the office with me. I'm going to put you on speaker, and CPS is going to know that you are present and the kids is present. And I do that for transparency and for trust. So they hear what I'm reporting. I won't be able to take anything from it or add anything to it. Nope, it never feels good to have someone to report on you. I had some family members reported me to Child Protective Services when my kids was young, for a made up situation. And so I know that feeling. And so when I get through making that report, then I sit with the parent and we just process those feelings that they're having. Hey, let's talk, and just encouraging them if there's some things that we need to do for them to set up, some safety measures or whatever. We talk about that and what they can do and what the child needs and stuff. So don't be afraid unless you know that it won't work like that with you and it will be a safety issue, I would not encourage you to do it if it's a safety issue. But if it's not a safety issue, do that report with the parent in there. And then when y'all get through making that report, then support that parent. Give them that space that they need, to just communicate about how they're feeling, what the thoughts going on in their mind. Because you know that their anxiety is probably increased. Now they're worrying like what's going to happen. And so even preparing them, for just giving them different, scenarios or experiences that you have. We all know the first thing that Child Protective Service is going to do when they get ready to remove the kids from the home. The first thing on the list is that you got to go take a parenting class. Some of the parents are required to go get therapy, mental health services and stuff. And so just making sure that you guys do that. They do have a program that Family and Children Services do that before they remove the kid, they have this safety program where they work with the parents, I think for like 6 or 7 weeks, to making sure that they put measures in place. And as long as they're doing what they need to do, they're good. But if not, they will snatch them. So I would encourage you guys to make sure that you guys are doing the report. Now, chronic absency from school. So just being absent a lot from school, those are signs. Untreated illness or injuries, those are signs too. Um, a lot of accidents and lack of supervision. So these are all signs, red flags as far as being neglect. Neglect often goes unnoticed because you can't always see it. And so, but it does create like deep trauma and insecurities. Now, there are long term um, effects effects of child abuse. So, abuse by any kind has the potential to cause permanent harm. The impact of a child abuse extend beyond visible physical scars. The child may have psychological difficulties and encounter challenges with trust. One thing I will say is that growing up, if the person that abused you was your caregivers, if it was an adult, you don't trust adults at all. For the rest of your life, well, not for the rest of, but for the most part of your life, a child is not going to trust the adult because that was the person that abused them. So even though it was their parents, caregiver, it was an adult, and so they just have a trust issues with that. Um, Feeling worthlessness, low self esteem, and often experience, and then the child may demonstrate challenges in regulating their emotions. One thing that I have learned with the adult clients that I work with is that a lot of them, when you grow up in a home and there's abuse, there's not a lot that you can do, especially if it's coming from the caregiver, they have control. And so, what a lot of times that I see a lot of adults do is that when they get grown, in their mind, they're going to control everyone and everything that comes into that connects with them. And so, and that gives them a false sense of safety. So they like, if I control everyone and everything, then no one can hurt me again because I'm controlling what they can and can't do. And it's just a false sense of safety. So for couples, whether you married or not, and you got children, that is very dangerous because what you're teaching your child is to be codependent on you. Once again, not able to think critical and not able to think outside of the box because of your need to feel safe. And so you literally put them in a box and you are actually grooming them to be codependent and grooming them to be in abusive relationships. Now, an abusive relationship don't necessarily have to always mean, romantic relationships. It can be at work. It can be relationships that you may have with family members or friends. And so that's just that controlling thing. That's not good. And if you are in a situationship or marriage or whatever, and that's your issue, you need to go and get help because not everybody wants to be controlled. And if you have your partner and they okay with being controlled, that's a red flag there too. Because it's like, why are you okay with this? That's not a norm. And that's a sign that they too probably grew up in some type of abusive home. So making sure that you guys are not controlling everyone and everything. Children are subject to abuse, develop toxic levels of chronic stress. Other stressors, such as positive stress, can be beneficial for the child development. For instance, the process of transitioning to a different academy, institution, or school might be an anxiety into uh might produce and increase their anxiety is what I'm trying to say. And it also can be very vulnerable for them. So one of the things that I notice about children who has been in those type of environments is that they don't do well with change. And so foster parents, listen, this is one of the skills that you have to have when working with your foster kids. They don't do well with change, so you have to make sure that you have a structured setting at home, for one, and two, you got to prepare them. So if you know they got a doctor's appointment 2 weeks from today, you don't wait till the day of, but you start 2 weeks and get them prepared every day for that. So Thursday you're not going to school Thursday morning because we got to go see Dr. Cornbread. Getting them prepared and continually letting them know that, because when they come out of a traumatized environment, a situation, you have to understand they were in an environment where they know anything was going to happen, anything was going to pop off. They didn't know when, where, and how. And so they was always on edge, always on guard. And so now they're in a environment, hopefully that is loving and peaceful, because that's not always the case with foster care. But when they in a good environment, even though it's a good environment, and you guys know that you're going to keep them safe, you're going to give them what they need, they don't know that. All they know is that everybody from that point in their life that has hurt them was adults. And so you have to make sure that you have structure in the home, and they pretty much know what they're going to do from the time they get up to the time they go to bed. And there are some life situations or things just happen where you cannot prepare them because you don't have time, and that's fine. But for the most part, making sure that, to help decrease their anxiety levels, that there is some structure going on. So if you know that they're getting ready to start a new school, you don't wait the week of the day of to tell them, oh, y'all going to start a new school. You get them prepared. And one way that you can prepare the kids from starting a new school is, hey, we're going to go up to this building every day, or we're going to go 2 or 3 times a week so you can touch the building. We're going to get in contact with the principal and see if we can come in and tour. And do they have a teacher, to see if they can meet the teacher ahead of time? Look in the class and see where they're going to sit, And so that helps with reducing their anxiety. Let's see. Persistent, elevated amounts of stress can be detrimental to a child and actively harm the development of the child brain structure. So y'all know I talk about the brain and the development of the brain all the time, and that's what stress does. Exposure to toxic stress can result in notable modification in the child's brain, which can give rise to behavior challenges. So the hyperactivity fight or flight centers, it seeks some type of calmness, also gratification too. And you can do that through activities such as eating food, that can gratify us. And I think what people don't understand too, that also activate one of the longest cranial nerves in our body, which is the vagus nerve. I'm gonna do a whole podcast on that. It's amazing how our body was designed. But when you doing these activities, eating food, using drugs, or engaging in unhealthy behaviors, what is being released and activated is the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve, when it's activated, it produces the dopamine, which is the pleasure hormone. And when the pleasure hormone is released, you're feeling good. It's like a high. And so, yeah, doing stuff like that will do that. Another thing that also impacts abuse is their thinking pattern, their ability to think. And I think a couple of weeks ago, I talked about the frontal cortex up here, this part of the brain, and it's not working. That's what happens when you are in an environment where there's a lot of trauma. It never gets activated. So it does not know how to reason. And that's why it's good for a child to also get mental health services as well as the parent. Child abuse and neglect are now directly linked to some problems, such as behavior and achievement issues in school, heart, lungs, and liver disease, obesity, diabetes, depression, anxiety disorder, and more suicide attempts, more crimes, drug use, alcohol abuse, unattended pregnancies, and other issues. Y'all, this is like really real because that means that the abuse that they had encounter, a lot of times they identify themselves with that. The stress of reliving that trauma in your mind, and when you're reliving it, it's activating the pain. And so people don't like to feel the pain all the time. They want to be numb. They don't want to keep reliving that horrifying, situation that they had to grow up in. And so what happens is that they do anything to numb it. So that may be alcohol, that may be drugs, that just me being out in the streets, prostituting and stuff, and just a lot of crime. So they do all that because when their mind's settled, then here we go again with all these thoughts and memories. So they're trying to do something to numb the pain and to stop the memories. That's why mental health therapy is real good to help with those. So, what to do if you suspect abuse? Pay attention to your gut feelings. We always got this instinct, something just don't feel right. So, if something doesn't feel right, it is probably going to be right. So, if something don't seem right, go back and investigate. Don't just brush that over. We've heard a lot of stories of people being in situations, but before they got in situations, something never felt right. And so instead of them just like, hey, let me back up and research what's this I'm feeling, they'll just go on and do it. And then something happens. You need to document. Write down what you see, what you heard, and what you observed. And make sure that if you can, put them dates on there. Report when you call your state child abuse hotline or child protective services, knowing that you can always do it anonymous. Nobody got to know. Be calm and supportive. So if a child discloses something to you, don't panic, stay calm, and thank them for telling you and reassure them that they're not going to be in trouble. So that's one of the big things to do too. When they tell you, you just like, oh, you are so brave, for you to say that, for you to, tell me that. And I know that had to be hard, especially if it was someone that they were kin to that was doing the abuse. Had to be hard. Someone close to them that they actually love. So making sure that you telling them that and reassuring them that they're not going to be in trouble. You don't need any proof to make a report. You just need reasonable suspension. So that means that you're not going to be the investigator. If you have a hunch, make the report, because now it's up to Child Protective Services or Department of Human Services. They have to go and investigate. And so I know this episode was a little heavy, but this is the foundation. So if you don't know what abuse look like, we can't prove it. Next week, we're going to talk about how to start body safety conversation with your kids, even toddlers. You'll learn how to teach them boundaries, consent, and how to help kids recognize and report unsafe behaviors. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to leave a comment. Don't forget to share. And don't forget to like. And you can find resources. And you can also report just by dialing 211. You can find resources by dialing 211. When you dial 211, you let them know what type of resources that you need. Now, you also can go onto my website, which is hiddencounseling.com, and you also can go and kind of do the contact thing and put in there what it is that you're needing or any questions that you have, and I will check those and making sure that I can direct you or give you the information that you need. Okay, until next time, this is the Kitchen Podcast. Make sure that you have a good day. But in Tabitha Brown words, if you're not having a good day, don't you go mess up somebody else's day. And in my words, go put yourself in time out until you come down and you ready to reconnect in a healthy way. Until then, I will see you guys next week.